Hello, this is psychologist Yulia Latunenko. Today we'll be talking about borderline personality disorder, what signs of this disorder you might observe in others and perhaps even recognize in yourself. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please do so. Give this video a like. This really helps promote my YouTube channel across the internet. And don't forget to leave a comment. Any comment longer than 7 words is also very valuable to me. So personality disorder, borderline personality disorder, BPD as we are used to calling it. And the first and most important sign, experts consider self-harm to be the main sign. It used to be thought that self-harm was the hallmark of borderline personality disorder. But now there is evidence that people with borderline personality disorder may go their entire lives without ever once attempting to harm their own bodies in any way. So what does this mean? Here we're talking about cutting, pulling out hair, hitting oneself, or scratching the skin. But borderline personality disorder is not always accompanied by this symptom. Although if this symptom is present, then it's 100% BPD. The second sign of borderline personality disorder is that a person periodically loses touch with reality. That is, these can be situations when a person becomes very reactive, responds very emotionally to certain stimuli on the outside, and she doesn't give the impression at all that she's in reality, that she's testing this reality as if she's experiencing some kind of trauma flashback. And during this flashback, she might say or do very inappropriate things. Or there are such states as derealization, that is when a person starts to see the whole world as if it's flat, drawn, distorted, almost cartoonish. This can happen. This is also a sign of borderline disorder. The third sign of borderline personality disorder is constant mood swings. In some circles, borderline personality disorder is also called emotionally unstable personality disorder. And it is accompanied by the fact that a person, even without any apparent reason, can be in a calm mood, and then as if an internal switch flips, their mood suddenly drops. Or after being in a bad mood, their mood suddenly shifts to a good one. In other words, these sharp mood swings, like a sine wave. Such high intensity of emotions is also a sign of borderline personality disorder. The fourth sign is outbursts of anger, which also relate to sudden mood changes. That is, such outbursts of anger which are also triggered by very minor stimuli from the outside, and the reaction itself seems to far exceed the external stimulus. It could be a trigger word, some kind of sound. For example, something might fall and make a sharp noise and the person gets extremely irritated. Or they might see some crumbs on the table and it just makes them lose their temper completely. And they explode with anger. So the stimulus is minor, but the reaction is very intense, a furious reaction. Because such a person periodically loses touch with reality, including during episodes of anger or mood swings, they also experience fluctuations in empathy. That is, at certain moments, the person can be quite empathetic, hypersensitive, and warm. It's as if she returns to reality with her neurotic, warm, healthy side. Then, when she falls back into trauma, she enters a borderline state and becomes completely unempathic, harsh, cold, and rigid. And can only think about her own selfish needs, only about her own ego. And then many people start to wonder whether such a person has it at all. Empathy, it exists, but it appears only episodically. Another sign of borderline personality disorder is that a person either has their own boundaries violated, that is, she allows other people to violate her boundaries and may react to this very violently with anger. She also doesn't notice when she violates the boundaries of others, and she always takes an externally accusatory stance. Everyone else is bad, I'm good. That is, she doesn't notice how she violates boundaries, how she breaks them, how she can intrude into other people's personal space. But in any case, she will still find a way out and blame those people whose boundaries she has violated. So this is also a kind of upside down world where, in order not to feel guilt or take responsibility, such a person will blame other people for all problems, including their own. By the way, another sign is that the word responsibility means nothing to such a person. Not at all. Like a red rag to a bull. That is, she never takes any responsibility. For her, responsibility is always shifted onto other people. And she perceives responsibility as guilt. So this is an externally accusatory position where the person says it's her fault, or I'm like this because it's her fault. She made me this way. It's your fault that I yelled at you. And next, we have the seventh sign of borderline disorder. Such a person gives a lot of their own subjective interpretations to actions, words, situations, and events. This person fantasizes a lot, makes up a lot of things. She knows better why you acted the way you did. She will analyze your actions. She knows better what is going on in your head. In reality, these are her fantasies, which she dissociates from herself and projects onto you. And it's very difficult to prove to such a person that you didn't mean what she's attributing to you. Because again, as I said, she knows better what's going on in your head. The eighth sign of a living disorder is that these people are quite suspicious. They have paranoid traits. They are distrustful because they have experienced a lot of pain in the past. That's why they don't trust anyone and always anticipate some kind of hostile behavior from other people. Or on the contrary, the polar case, when a person without any real basis trusts strangers and ends up in very complicated situations that can threaten their health or even their life. That is, these are people who get into such dramatic situations because they give too much trust in advance. So these are polar states, either one way or the other. And the next point also describes this kind of ambivalence. Love and hate. And this happens simultaneously towards the same person. A person with borderline personality disorder will feel both emotions. At the same time, love and hate. That's why such people are prone to forming toxic relationships. They don't leave toxic relationships because they both love and hate. And in the phase when they hate, they can provoke, they can create very conflictual situations. So it's this kind of double reality where both love and hate exist at the same time. This is about people with borderline personality disorder. The 10th sign of borderline personality disorder is that a person with this disorder experiences life like an emotional roller coaster. Up, down, happiness, unhappiness. And such a person may be completely unaware that they themselves are provoking these swings, that they are the ones creating these ups and downs in their own life, especially in relationships with close people. But because they are unable to take responsibility for themselves, unable to look at themselves critically, such a person will have a blind spot where it will seem to them that it is others who are provoking them, that others are to blame for these emotional swings. The 11th sign, probably here, everything follows from what was said earlier, that such people are usually codependent. Codependency, counterdependency, and dependency. This can include alcoholism, drug addiction, and gambling addiction. Food addiction can also be included. In other words, any kind of addiction. Codependency is when a person is addicted, like to a drug, like to alcohol, Victor, to another person. And counterdependency is when a person has such a strong fear of intimacy that they want a relationship but can't let anyone get close because it's too frightening. Because in childhood, close relationships were unbearable and very traumatic. That's why such a person as an adult won't be able to build close relationships because of that fear of intimacy that sits in their subconscious. And a person might not even suspect that these are the consequences of their childhood traumas and that this borderline personality disorder is actually a series of very serious childhood traumas that lead to this disorder in a person. The 12th sign is increased conflict proneness. Wherever such a person finds themselves, at work, in the family, they will always have conflicts. But such a person is completely unaware that they themselves are the author of these conflicts. They interfere in other people's affairs. There is a lot of intrigue and gossip. They may stir things up, and such a person in principle cannot live peacefully. At work too, they will create these emotional roller coasters for themselves and those around them. The 13th sign is a tendency toward manipulation. Such a person especially loves, so to speak, loves to manipulate others by making them feel guilty. Feelings of shame and always the fear of breaking emotional contact. Such people play the silent treatment, scaring their loved ones by threatening to break off emotional contact with them, and they threaten to leave their loved one. But why does this stem from the 14th sign? Fear of abandonment. This is actually the main hallmark of a person with borderline personality disorder. Such a person is so afraid of being abandoned that even at the slightest hint that they might be left, they can either become very toxic or they themselves can turn into a spiteful abandoner. That is, it's as if they preempt this blow and leave first if they feel that they might be abandoned at any moment, because this trauma is the most painful for them. And finally, the 15th sign that I promised you is a tendency to generalize. What does this mean? It's a tendency to generalize everything. A person very often uses words like these, like everyone, always. All men are jerks, all women are bitches. This is generalization. When a person generalizes something, having just a minor reason for it, they interpret someone's behavior and then apply that behavior to everyone. This can relate to gender, nationality, or other common traits among people. So generalization is also a sign of borderline personality disorder, because during generalization, a person loses touch with reality. If one man offended you, it doesn't mean that all men are jerks. But in order to understand this, you need to have a connection with reality. So, as always, I ask you to subscribe to my YouTube channel and give this video a like. Don't forget that any activity from you, your comments, this is very valuable to me. Any comment longer than 7 words is a huge thank you from you to me for my work. See you again.